Sophia was just 7 years old when she climbed onto that lit stage, holding the microphone with her trembling little hands. The bright lights partially blinded her, but she could see the audience of over 1,000 people waiting for her words. Her light pink dress, donated by a neighbor days before, was a little too big, and the borrowed white shoes hurt her small feet. The host, Robert Michaels, a 50-year-old man accustomed to television emotions, smiled beside her with that professional smile of someone who has interviewed hundreds of winners. He held the golden envelope with the check for $50,000, the prize for the National Children's Essay Contest. Sophia had won among more than 200,000 children from all over the United States. But when the host asked in that cheerful, rehearsed tone what she would do with the prize, the girl's answer froze not only him, but every single person in that arena. Her words came out laden with a pain so deep it seemed impossible to fit inside that slender little body. "I want to save my mother," she said, and tears began to stream down her thin face as her wobbly legs almost gave way. Robert's smile vanished instantly. His eyes widened. The hand holding the microphone trembled visibly, and for a long 5 seconds that felt like an eternity, he was completely petrified, unable to utter a single word. And if you want to follow emotional and true stories like this one, subscribe to the channel here and hit the bell so you don't miss any special videos. Now let's get to know Sophia's full story. 3 months before that day on stage, Sophia woke up every day at 5:30 in the morning in a 2-room house on the outskirts of a suburb in New Jersey. The house was in a narrow alley where the sun took a long time to reach, and the peeling walls had damp stains that formed strange patterns. The smell of mold mixed with the aroma of the weak coffee her mother prepared was the first sensation of each morning. Sophia slept on a thin mattress on the living room floor, covered by a worn-out sheet and a blanket that was once blue, but now had an undefined color between gray and brown. She shared that space with her mother, Helen, who was only 32, but had the tired appearance of someone much older. Helen worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses during the week, and on Saturdays she cleaned a small neighborhood grocery store. Her knees constantly ached from spending hours on them scrubbing floors, and her rough hands had deep calluses from the harsh cleaning products. Even so, she always woke up before Sophia to prepare the girls' breakfast. A glass of coffee with very light milk, because the milk had to last, and 2 slices of bread with margarine. Sometimes, when there was money left over from the grocery run, she would place a banana next to it. Sophia ate in silence, sitting on the only chair that didn't wobble, while watching her mother get ready for another day of work. The routine was always the same. Helen left at 6:15, and Sophia stayed alone until 7, when she went to the municipal public school 3 blocks away. The girl locked the door with the key she carried around her neck on a piece of string and walked through the still empty streets. She passed by Mr. Reynolds' bar, who was already sweeping the sidewalk by Mrs. Celia's bakery, which filled the air with the smell of warm bread that Sophia could never afford to buy, and by the small park where some homeless people were still sleeping on cardboard. At school, Sophia was known as the quiet girl in class. She always sat in the front row, wore the same worn-out uniform all week, and carried a faded pink backpack that had once belonged to another child. Her notebooks were meticulous with neat round handwriting, but sometimes pages were missing because she had to tear some out to do her homework when the previous notebook ran out and there was no money to buy another. She didn't have many friends. The other children noticed her always wearing the same clothes. Her lunch, which was just a piece of bread with margarine wrapped in a paper bag, and they kept a respectful but cold distance. The English teacher, Marianne Santos, was the first to notice something special in Sophia. During a lesson about writing, she asked the students to write about their dreams. While most children wrote about video games, trips to Disney World, or expensive toys, Sophia handed in 3 pages written by hand with perfect handwriting about the dream of seeing her mother smiling for real without that deep tiredness in her eyes. The essay had a sensitivity and maturity that were startling for a 7-year-old child. Marianne read and reread that text, feeling a lump in her throat. There was a raw talent there, an ability to express complex emotions with simple but powerful words. That afternoon, when classes ended, Marianne called Sophia to talk. The classroom was empty. The unoccupied desks created long shadows with the sunlight coming through the window. Sophia approached with that shy manner, her large brown eyes always attentive. "Sit here, honey," said Marianne, pointing to the chair next to her desk. Sophia obeyed, her skinny little legs swinging without reaching the floor. The teacher held the essay, and there was something in her eyes that Sophia couldn't identify. "You write very well, you know that?" asked Marianne in a soft voice. Sophia just shrugged. "My mom says I know how to use pretty words," she replied quietly. "And she's right. Have you ever thought about entering essay contests?" Sophia didn't know what that was. Marianne explained that there were competitions where children wrote texts and the best ones won prizes. "Prizes?" asked Sophia, and her eyes shone for the first time in that conversation. "Yes, sometimes money, books, tablets." The girl was silent for a moment. "How much money?" she whispered. Marianne smiled. "It depends on the contest. Some give $1,000, others more. One year the first prize was $50,000. Sophia's eyes widened. That number was so big it seemed unreal, impossible. With $50,000 she could do so much for her mother. In the following days, Marianne brought information about a national children's essay contest sponsored by a large education company. The theme was, "What does family mean to you?" The entries were free and could be done online. The final deadline was in a month. Marianne offered to help Sophia with the entry and to review her text before sending it. For 3 weeks, teacher and student met twice a week after school. Sophia wrote and rewrote. Marianne guided her carefully so as not to lose the girl's unique voice. The final text Sophia produced was devastatingly honest. She wrote about waking up early and seeing her mother preparing coffee with hands trembling from exhaustion, about hugging Helen at night and smelling the cleaning products ingrained in her skin, about sharing the last piece of bread when her mother lied, saying she had already eaten, about pretending not to see the silent tears Helen shed when she thought her daughter was asleep. "Family," Sophia wrote, "is my mother carrying the whole world on her back, just so I can have a plate of food and a school to study in. Family is love that hurts, because it's so big." Marianne cried, reading the final version. She knew that text had something special, a raw truth that would touch anyone who read it. They sent the essay with just 2 days left before the deadline. Sophia didn't tell Helen anything. She was afraid of creating hopes that could turn into yet another disappointment in a life already full of them. 2 months passed. Sophia had almost forgotten about the contest when Marianne appeared in her classroom in the middle of a Friday morning, her face red from running, her eyes shining with emotion. She excused herself to the math teacher and went straight to Sophia. "You won," she whispered in a trembling voice, holding the girl's shoulders. "You won, Sophia. First place nationally." The whole class fell silent. Sophia didn't understand immediately. "Won what?" she asked, confused. "The contest. You are the winner among 212,000 children from all over the United States. And the prize is $50,000. The world seemed to stop. Sophia felt like she couldn't breathe properly. $50,000, that impossible number. She immediately thought of her mother. She thought of the overdue bills, the empty refrigerator at the end of the month, the medicine Helen needed but didn't buy to save money. The tears came suddenly uncontrollable. Marianne hugged her right there, in the middle of the classroom, while the other students started to applaud without fully understanding what was happening, but sensing it was something important. The award ceremony would be in 2 weeks in New York City, in a large, famous Broadway theater. There would be television, journalists, and Sophia would have to go on stage to receive the prize from the hands of the host, Robert Michaels, who hosted the most watched variety show in the country. The whole school was excited by the news. Suddenly, Sophia was no longer the quiet, invisible girl. She was the winner, the child prodigy. Students who had never spoken to her wanted to be her friends. Teachers congratulated her in the hallways. But Helen's reaction was what marked Sophia the most. When the girl got home that afternoon, her mother was sitting in the only good chair in the house, the official letter from the contest trembling in her hands. Marianne had called Helen at work to give her the news. Her employer had let Helen leave early, moved by the story. When Sophia pushed the creaky wooden door, she found her mother in tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of a relief so profound it seemed like pain. "My daughter," Helen repeated between sobs. "My daughter did it." Sophia ran into her mother's arms and they stayed there, hugging, crying together, until the small living room grew dark with the falling night. In those 2 weeks before the award ceremony, something strange began to happen. Helen, who had always seemed strong despite everything, started to lose even more weight. Her face grew paler, and sometimes she would lean her hand against the wall as if she were losing her balance. Sophia noticed but didn't know what to ask. One night, she woke up to a noise coming from the bathroom. It was Helen vomiting. The girl stood still on the mattress, her heart racing, not knowing what to do. When her mother returned, Sophia pretended to be asleep, but through the slit of her eyes she saw Helen sit on the floor and put her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. The next day, Sophia asked, "Mom, are you sick?" Helen forced a smile. "It's just tiredness, honey. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. Each day Helen seemed smaller, more fragile, as if she were slowly disappearing. Sophia began to get scared, a fear that grew in her chest like a dark shadow. 1 week before the award ceremony, Sophia came home from school earlier because the gym teacher was absent. When she got home, she found Helen passed out on the kitchen floor. Her mother's thin body was unconscious, her skin cold to the touch. Sophia screamed. She screamed loudly, a sound she didn't know could come from her throat. The neighbors heard. Mrs. Irene from next door came running in, saw Helen on the floor, and immediately called an ambulance. At the Grayson County Public Hospital, Sophia waited for 4 hours sitting on a hard plastic bench in the hallway. Her legs wouldn't stop shaking, her sweaty hands gripping the strap of her backpack. Doctors and nurses rushed by, but no one said anything to her. It was almost night when a young doctor in a white coat finally approached. "Are you Helen Cardoso's daughter?" he asked, crouching in front of Sophia. The girl nodded yes. "Your mother is awake now and she's going to be okay, but we need to talk about something important," he explained carefully, using simple words. Helen had a tumor in her pancreas. It was cancer. The disease was already advanced. She needed urgent treatment, surgery, and chemotherapy. The doctor talked about the public health system, about waiting lists, about the seriousness of the situation. Sophia heard everything, but it seemed like the words were coming from very far away, muffled. Cancer. That word she had heard on television, always followed by sad stories. "Is my mother going to die?" asked Sophia, and her voice was just a thread. The doctor hesitated. He looked at that 7-year-old child with eyes too big for her thin face. "We will do everything we can," he replied, "but the truth is that treatment through the public system can take time, and your mother needs quick care. If she could do it at a private clinic—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Sophia understood. Private treatment cost money. A lot of money, money they didn't have. She remembered the prize, $50,000. Would it be enough? "How much does it cost?" she asked. The doctor sighed. "Between surgery, chemotherapy, medication, and follow-up, we're talking about something between $80,000 and $100,000, possibly more." Sophia's heart sank. Not even the prize would be enough. That night, Sophia slept in a chair next to the hospital bed where Helen was admitted. Her mother had woken up, but was weak, connected to IVs and machines that beeped from time to time. She held her daughter's hand with little strength. "I'm sorry, honey," she whispered. "Sorry for being sick." Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. "It's not your fault, Mom. We'll be okay. We're always okay." But for the first time in her life, Sophia wasn't sure if that was true. Helen was discharged 2 days later, with a list of medications she needed to take and a date for a follow-up appointment. The surgery through the public system was scheduled for 3 months from then. 3 months. The doctor had made it clear that could be too late. Back in the small, damp house, mother and daughter lay down together on the thin mattress. Helen was so thin that Sophia could count her ribs through her old nightgown. "About the award ceremony next week," Helen began in a weak voice. "I think you should go alone with Teacher Marianne. I'm not well enough to travel." Sophia curled up closer to her mother. "I don't want to go without you." Helen stroked her daughter's hair. "You have to go. It's your achievement, your moment, and that money will help us. Maybe we can pay for at least part of the treatment." In the days leading up to the award ceremony, Sophia could barely concentrate on anything. At school, she looked at her notebook, but didn't see the letters. At home, she prepared food for her mother, who could barely eat. Helen was getting weaker every day. Some nights, Sophia woke up to her mother moaning softly in pain. She would get up, get a wet cloth and put it on Helen's forehead, whispering words of comfort that she had heard her mother say to her when she was younger. "It'll pass, Mum. I'm here." It'll pass. But before we continue and find out the outcome of this emotional story, leave your like here in the video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and hit the bell so you don't miss any new stories. Do you believe the government should do more to ensure quick cancer treatment for poor people? Also tell me which city you're watching this video from, and I'll mark your comment with a special heart. Now, let's get back to our story. The day of the award ceremony arrived faster than Sophia would have liked. It was a sunny Saturday in October. Marianne picked up Sophia at 7 in the morning. The teacher had bought a new light pink dress for the girl, and a neighbor lent white shoes. In the broken bathroom mirror, Sophia barely recognized herself. She looked like another child, more put together, but with the same sad, tired eyes. Helen was lying down, too weak to get up. "So you look beautiful, my daughter," she said with a weak smile. "Go there and show everyone how special my girl is." Sophia hugged her mother tightly, feeling the pronounced bones, the body warm with fever. "I'll bring the prize and we'll take care of you. I promise." The bus trip to New York City took 2 hours. Sophia was silent most of the time, looking out the window without really seeing the passing landscape. Marianne tried to talk to cheer her up, but she could tell the girl was somewhere else. When they arrived at the Broadway Theater, Sophia was impressed. It was a huge building, with marble staircases, gigantic chandeliers, and paintings on the ceiling. Well-dressed people were coming and going. There were television cameras, journalists with microphones, photographers. Everything was big, shiny, intimidating. Backstage, Sophia was taken to a small dressing room, where a kind makeup artist dusted some powder on her face and fixed her hair. "Are you nervous, dear?" the woman asked in a sweet voice. Sophia just nodded. "It's normal, but everything will be fine. You are the big winner of the day." The girl wanted to say that she didn't feel like a winner, that inside she felt empty, scared, thinking only of her sick mother at home, but she said nothing. At 3 in the afternoon, the ceremony began. The theater was packed. More than 1,000 people in the audience. Sophia watched the opening speeches from a spot backstage. They talked about the importance of education, about the talent of American children, about the future of the country. Then her turn came. She heard her name being announced. Sophia Cardoso, 7 years old, from New Jersey, author of the essay "The Love That Hurts So Much," winner of the National Children's Essay Contest. The applause exploded. A stage assistant led her to the center of the lit stage. The lights were too strong. Sophia needed a few seconds for her eyes to adjust. When she finally could see, what she saw was frightening. Rows and rows of people applauding. Cameras pointed at her. Giant screens showing her face enlarged. And there, in the center of the stage, the host Robert Michaels, with his impeccable suit and white smile. He approached and crouched down to Sophia's height. "Hello, Sophia. Congratulations on your victory." His voice echoed through the speakers. Sophia murmured an almost inaudible "thank you." Robert laughed. "She's shy, folks, but brave enough to write one of the most beautiful essays I've ever read in my life." He asked a few questions. How she felt, if she was happy, if she had imagined she would win. Sophia answered with short phrases, her voice trembling. Then Robert picked up the golden envelope that was on a table nearby. "Inside this envelope is a check for $50,000, Sophia. That's quite a sum, isn't it? What do you plan to do with this money? Is this where we buy something cool for you? A video game? New clothes? Maybe help your mom fix up the house?" It was a scripted question. He expected a cute answer, something that would generate laughs or applause from the audience. But Sophia wasn't thinking about scripts. She was thinking about her mother. About Helen lying on that thin mattress, burning with fever, wasting away each day. She thought about the doctor saying 3 months could be too late. She thought about losing the only person she had in the world. The tears came before the words. "I want to save my mother," said Sophia, and her voice broke. Robert's smile disappeared. He became completely still, the golden envelope frozen in the air, his eyes wide. The audience fell silent. "Can you repeat that?" he asked. But his voice was different now, without the rehearsed host tone. "I want to save my mother," repeated Sophia, the tears flowing freely now. "She has cancer. The doctor said she needs urgent surgery, but through the public system it will take 3 months and it might be too late. This money won't be enough, but at least I can pay for part of the treatment. I just want my mother to stay alive." The silence that took over the theater was deafening. 1,000 people completely mute. Robert Michaels, a man who spent 30 years in entertainment and thought he had seen it all, was petrified. Tears began to form in his eyes. He let the envelope fall and knelt down completely in front of Sophia, not caring that his expensive suit was touching the dirty stage floor. He hugged the girl. There, in front of everyone, of all the cameras, he hugged Sophia and didn't try to hide that he was crying. The audience started crying along. Women took tissues from their purses. Men discreetly wiped their eyes. Even the cameramen behind the professional cameras had tears streaming down. Robert moved back a little, held Sophia's shoulders, and looked her in the eyes. "We are going to save your mother," he said with a firm voice. "Do you hear me, Sophia? We are going to save your mother. I promise." He stood up and turned to the audience. "I've been here for 30 years doing television, and never ever have I been touched by something like this. This girl, this incredible child, just won $50,000, and all she wants is to save her mother's life. So that's what we're going to do." He gestured to the production. Within minutes, a crew was bringing phones to the stage. Robert called live to hospitals, to doctors, to businessmen he knew. Sophia stayed by his side the whole time, not fully understanding what was happening. The broadcast that was supposed to have ended continued. The cameras kept rolling, and what happened in the next 2 hours was extraordinary. The show's phone started ringing non-stop, people wanting to donate. $100, $500, $2,000. Companies calling, offering to pay for the entire treatment. A private hospital in Long Island called offering to perform the entire surgery and chemotherapy free of charge. A transport company offered to take Helen by ambulance. Oncologists called offering to treat her without charging anything. In less than 3 hours, not only was Helen's treatment guaranteed, but over $200,000 had been donated. Robert cried again, "Live," when he announced all of this. Sophia couldn't process it. She was in shock. Was all of that real? Marianne came up on stage and hugged the girl, both of them crying in each other's arms. Mrs. Irene, the neighbor who helped on the day of the fainting, was in the audience crying. Several people from the New Jersey community had managed to get last-minute tickets and were there cheering, crying, celebrating. That same night, a private ambulance picked up Helen from home. She was taken to the Manhattan Star Hospital, one of the best private hospitals in New York City. Sophia went along holding her mother's hand the entire time. Helen was confused, weak, not fully understanding what was happening. "My daughter, what did you do?" she asked. "I saved you, Mom," Sophia replied. "Just like you always saved me." At the hospital, Helen was immediately evaluated by a team of 5 specialist oncology doctors. They did tests, CT scans, MRIs. The tumor was serious, but there was hope. The surgery was scheduled for 3 days later. Meanwhile, Helen stayed in a private room with a comfortable bed, quality food, attentive nurses. Sophia didn't leave her mother's side for a single moment. She slept in a recliner chair next to the bed. She held Helen's hand during the scary tests. The night before the surgery, Helen was more lucid. The pain medication was working and she could talk more. "How did my 7-year-old daughter do this?" she asked, looking at Sophia with tear-filled eyes. "You are a child. You should be playing, not saving your mother's life." Sophia climbed onto the hospital bed and lay down next to Helen, careful not to disturb the tubes and wires. "I wrote about you, Mom. I wrote the truth. That you are the best mother in the world. That you are my entire family. And everyone who read it understood. People aren't bad, Mom. They were just waiting to know our story." Helen hugged her daughter with the little strength she had. "I don't deserve you. You deserve everything, Mom. Everything good." They slept like that, hugging, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia managed to sleep for real, without nightmares, without waking up in the middle of the night, afraid. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Sophia waited in the waiting room along with Marianne, Mrs. Irene, and surprisingly, Robert Michaels. The host had cancelled commitments to be there. He brought coffee, talked to Sophia, tried to distract her. When the surgeon finally came out, still in his scrubs, everyone stood up at once. "The surgery was successful," he announced with a tired smile. "We managed to remove the tumor completely. Now she will need to undergo chemotherapy, but the chances of recovery are good, very good." Sophia doesn't remember exactly what she did afterwards. She remembers screaming, hugging everyone, crying so much she couldn't breathe properly. She remembers Robert's enormous smile, Marianne's tears, Mrs. Irene praying out loud, thanking God. When she could finally see Helen in the recovery room hours later, her mother was sleeping but seemed at peace. Sophia kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you, Mom. We did it." The following months were of recovery. Helen had 6 sessions of chemotherapy. She lost her hair, felt nauseous, had difficult days, but she was alive, and each day that passed, she got a little stronger. Sophia continued studying, but now lived temporarily in a small but comfortable apartment that an NGO had made available to them near the hospital. Their story had moved the entire United States. They appeared in newspapers, television shows, news websites. Sophia's essay was published in a book along with the other winning essays, and all the profits from the sale were donated to cancer treatment for other children and adults in vulnerable situations. But not everything was a fairy tale. There were moments of deep pain. One night during the 3rd chemotherapy session, Helen became very ill. Sophia was at school when she got the call. It was Mrs. Irene, her voice trembling. "Honey, your mother is in the hospital. She's very sick. You need to come." Sophia's heart plummeted. She dropped everything and ran. She ran through the school hallways, down the street, got on a bus, and spent the whole trip with her legs shaking, her hands sweaty, praying quietly to all the saints she knew. "Please don't take my mother. Please don't take my mother, please." When she arrived at the hospital, she found doctors and nurses around Helen's bed. Her heart almost stopped, but then a nurse saw her and smiled. "Easy there, honey. Your mother is okay now. It was just a strong reaction to the medication. It scared us, but it's passed." Sophia entered the room and saw Helen pale, exhausted, but awake. "Mom!" she shouted and ran to the bed. Helen hugged her. "Sorry for scaring you, honey. I'm okay, I'm here." But that night Sophia couldn't sleep. She sat in the recliner next to the bed, watching her mother breathe, afraid that if she closed her eyes, Helen would disappear. During the treatment, some bad people also emerged, people who tried to take advantage of the situation. A supposed distant cousin of Helen showed up out of nowhere asking to borrow money. A woman claiming to be a journalist offered $50,000 for an exclusive interview, where Sophia would have to tell intimate and embarrassing details. Even some neighbors who had never helped before suddenly wanted to ask for favors. Robert Michaels, who had become a kind of protector for the family, helped Sophia and Helen navigate these situations. He hired a lawyer to protect their rights and taught Sophia how to say no when necessary. But the good people far outnumbered the bad ones. Teacher Marianne continued to be a pillar of support. She went to the hospital every week to bring books for Sophia, help with homework, and keep Helen company. Sophia's schoolmates started a campaign and collected toys, clothes, and school supplies. The owner of the bakery Sophia passed every day on her way to school started sending bread and cakes to the hospital every week. "I always saw you passing by," said Mrs. Celia with tears in her eyes, "and I regret never giving you a warm loaf of bread. Now I'll make up for it." And she did. For months she sent food. There were very difficult days, days when Helen vomited so much that Sophia had to hold her, clean her, comfort her. Days when her mother cried from pain and frustration at being sick, at depending so much on her 7-year-old daughter. One of those days was particularly memorable. Helen was in the bathroom, so weak she could barely stand. Sophia was helping her shower, and suddenly Helen broke down. She sat on the shower floor, the water falling on her, and started sobbing. "I should be taking care of you, not the other way around. You are a child. This isn't fair." Sophia knelt beside her mother, not caring that her clothes were getting wet. "We take care of each other, Mom. That's how it works. When you were strong, you took care of me. Now that you're weak, I take care of you. And when you get strong again, we'll take care of each other." Those simple words from a 7-year-old child contained a wisdom that many adults take a lifetime to learn. Helen hugged her daughter right there, under the shower, and both of them cried. But they were different tears now. They weren't just of pain, but also of love, of gratitude, of a connection so deep it transcended the difficult circumstances. Little by little, as the weeks passed, Helen began to visibly improve. Her face regained some color. She could eat better. Her hair started to grow back, thin and gray at first. She gained a pound here, another there, and most importantly, her smile returned. Not that tired, sad smile from before, but a true smile that lit up her eyes. Sophia was changing too. The shy, quiet girl was becoming more confident. She had given several interviews, talked to journalists, told her story hundreds of times. She had learned that her voice had power, that her words could move hearts and change lives. Teacher Marianne noticed the transformation. Sophia now participated more in class, raised her hand to answer questions, and had even made some real friends. Children who didn't approach out of interest, but out of genuine admiration and affection. 6 months after the surgery came the most awaited moment. Helen had a routine appointment with the head oncologist, Dr. Maurice Silver, a man of 60 with white hair and kind eyes. Sophia was in the room holding her mother's hand. The doctor opened the folder with the most recent tests. He studied the papers for what seemed like an eternity. Then finally he looked at Helen and Sophia with a huge smile. "Mrs. Helen, I have wonderful news. The tests show that you are completely free of cancer. There is no sign of cancer cells. You are in complete remission." The crying that came was of pure joy. Helen covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Sophia hugged her with all the strength she had. "I knew it, Mom. I knew we would do it." Dr. Silver waited patiently for them to process the news. "Of course, we will continue with follow-up exams for the next 5 years," he explained. "But everything indicates that you have had an extraordinary recovery. You two are warriors." Helen looked at her daughter through the tears. "I'm not the warrior. My daughter is. She saved me." The doctor smiled. "You saved each other." The news of Helen's remission spread quickly. Robert Michaels made a point of announcing it on his show. He invited Sophia and Helen for a special program, and this time, unlike the award ceremony, Helen was by her daughter's side on stage. She was still thin, with short hair growing back, but she was standing alive, smiling. The audience gave a standing ovation for a full 5 minutes. People cried openly. Robert cried too, without any shame. "This story," he said to the cameras, "reminds me why I do television, why I wake up every day and come to work. For moments like this, for stories like this." But what no one expected was what happened after that show. A businessman named Frederick Anderson, owner of a network of charter schools, contacted the production. He offered a full scholarship for Sophia to study at one of the best charter schools in New York City, from elementary school until the end of high school. Furthermore, he offered a job for Helen in the school's administration, with a living wage and all benefits. The only condition was that they agreed to participate in some annual lectures telling their story to inspire other students and staff. Helen couldn't believe it when she received the proposal. She read and reread the contract with trembling hands. It was real. Everything was real. She and Sophia would not only have survived the storm, but would come out of it in a place infinitely better than before. For the first time in her adult life, Helen wouldn't need to work 3 jobs. She wouldn't need to wake up at 5 in the morning with her body aching. She would have a fixed salary, a 13th month bonus, vacation, health insurance, and Sophia, her incredible girl, would have access to quality education, something Helen had always dreamed of but never imagined possible. They moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs, safe, clean, without mold on the walls. Sophia got a room all to herself, with a real bed, a desk to study at, and a bookshelf full of books that Robert Michaels had sent as a gift. Helen looked at all of that, and sometimes pinched her own arm, not believing it wasn't a dream. Adapting to the new school was challenging for Sophia. Suddenly she was surrounded by children from wealthy families, with brand-name clothes, new cell phones, talking about international trips, and things Sophia had never experienced. At first, she felt out of place, but her story preceded her. The students knew who she was, and instead of rejection, she found curiosity and eventually acceptance. She made real friends, children who invited her to play, who shared snacks, who wanted to hear her writing stories. 1 year passed, then 2. Helen remained in remission, the tests always clear. She gained 15 pounds, her hair grew full and shiny, and the worry lines on her face began to soften. She smiled more, laughed loudly. For the first time since Sophia could remember, she saw her mother truly happy. They had a new routine. They had breakfast together every morning without rush. Helen made pancakes on weekends. They went to the movies once a month. Small things that were once impossible were now part of their daily life. Sophia continued writing. She entered other contests and won several. She published stories in children's literary magazines. She started a blog where she wrote about her life, about overcoming adversity, about the importance of never giving up. The blog gained thousands of followers. Children from all over the United States wrote to her telling their own difficult stories, asking for advice, seeking inspiration. Sophia, now just 9 years old, answered every message with the same empathy and wisdom she had always shown. 2.5 years after the award, Sophia was invited to give a lecture at the same theatre where it all began. It was an event about education and children's literature. She climbed onto that same stage, but this time with Helen sitting in the first row of the audience, radiant with health and pride. Sophia, now nearly 10 years old, was taller, more confident. She wore a blue dress she had chosen herself, and her hair was tied in a simple ponytail. She held the microphone firmly and looked at the audience of over 1,000 people. 2.5 years ago, Sophia began in a clear voice, I climbed onto this stage for the first time. I was a scared, poor girl with a sick mother, and I thought the world was ending. Today I climb up here again, and I want to tell every child who is watching, no matter how difficult your life is right now, no matter how impossible it seems, you have a strength inside you that you can't even imagine. I discovered that strength when I wrote about my mother, when I put on paper everything I felt, all the love I had. And those words changed my life. They changed my mother's life. They changed the lives of thousands of people who helped us. She paused, her eyes shining with emotion but without tears. She wasn't sad anymore. So, if you are going through something difficult, write about it. Talk about it. Don't keep it to yourself. Because when we share our stories, when we show our vulnerability, we give other people permission to do the same. And then we create connections. Then the good people appear. And there are a lot of good people in the world. Many more than you imagine. The audience exploded in applause. Helen cried with pride. Robert Michaels, who was also in the audience, stood up and applauded forcefully. But the most emotional part of the story was yet to come. 3 years after the initial award, when Sophia had already turned 10, a surprise awaited. It was Sophia's birthday, a Saturday in March. Helen had organized a small party at home with a few friends from school and the neighborhood. There was cake, soda, snacks. Sophia was happy, blowing out the candles and making her wish silently when the doorbell rang. Helen went to answer it and came back with a strange expression on her face. "Honey, there's someone here who wants to see you." Sophia went to the door and was speechless. It was Robert Michaels, but he wasn't alone. With him was a couple Sophia recognized from the news. They were the owners of the company that had sponsored the original essay contest. And behind them there were 20 more children of various ages, all smiling. Robert came in with the whole group. "Sophia," he said with that caring smile she knew so well, "these children here all have one thing in common. Their parents or mothers had cancer and couldn't afford treatment." Sophia's eyes widened. "After your story was publicized," Robert continued, "the mobilization was so great that we created a fund. The Sophia Fund, it's called. And with this fund, so far, we have managed to pay for the complete cancer treatment for the parents of 83 children. These 20 who are here came to thank you in person." Sophia couldn't believe it. A girl of about 8 stepped forward. "Thank you for saving my dad," she said with tears in her eyes. "Because of you, he is alive." A boy of maybe 12 also approached. "My mother was given up on. The doctors said there was nothing else to be done. But the Sophia Fund paid for an experimental treatment, and she has been in remission for 6 months." One by one, the children thanked her. They hugged Sophia. They cried with her, and Sophia, in turn, hugged each one with all her strength. She hadn't just saved her own mother. She had, without knowing it, saved dozens of other families. Helen watched everything with tears streaming down her face. She approached and hugged her daughter from behind. "You changed the world, my daughter," she whispered in Sophia's ear. "For you literally changed the world." Sophia turned and looked at her mother, and then at all those children and at Robert, and at her friends who were also crying, and felt something she had never felt before. It was peace. It was fullness. It was the deep certainty that everything had been worth it. All the suffering, all the fear, all the pain had led to that moment, to that room full of love and gratitude. In the following years, the Sophia Fund continued to grow. Helen became one of the volunteer coordinators, helping to select families that needed help and monitoring the treatments. Sophia continued writing, studying, growing. She never forgot where she came from. Every year, on the anniversary of the award, she and Helen returned to the community in New Jersey to distribute books, school supplies, and hold a reading circle with the children. Sophia told stories, taught writing techniques, and most importantly, showed those children that they too could dream big. When Sophia turned 15, She had already published her first book, a collection of stories based on real-life stories of overcoming adversity that she had collected over the years. The book became a national bestseller. All the profits were donated to the Sophia Fund. By that time, the fund had helped more than 300 families, 300 fathers and mothers who were alive, because of that little 7-year-old girl who one day climbed onto a stage and said with all the sincerity of her heart that she just wanted to save her mother. Helen, now 38 years old, had been completely cured for over 5 years. She was officially considered free of cancer. She worked not only at the school but also gave lectures about overcoming adversity and was a spokesperson for national cancer awareness campaigns. She and Sophia were often invited together to events, mother and daughter side by side telling their story, inspiring millions. One day, when Sophia was 16, she and Helen were sitting on the apartment balcony, drinking tea and watching the sunset. The sky was painted orange and pink, the clouds forming shapes that slowly changed. "Mum," Sophia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "do you remember that day in the hospital when you asked if you were going to die?" Helen nodded. "I never told you, but that night I made a promise. I promised that if you survived, I would dedicate my life to helping other people, to using my words to make a difference. And I keep that promise every day." Helen took her daughter's hand. "You didn't need to make that promise, honey. You were already making a difference just by existing, but I understand, and I am so proud of who you have become, not just the famous writer or the activist or all those important things, but the person, the kind, empathetic and strong young woman you are." Sophia rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "We did it, Mom. Against all odds, we did it." And they really had. Years later, when Sophia was already an adult, with a degree in literature and working as a teacher, as well as a writer, she returned to the Broadway Theatre for a special event. It was the 10th anniversary of the Sophia Fund. 1,000 children whose parents had been saved by the fund were present. 1,000 stories of hope. 1,000 families that had stayed together because a little 7-year-old girl had the courage to be vulnerable, to speak her truth, to ask for help. Sophia climbed onto the stage. Helen was in the first row, as always. Robert Michaels was there too, now retired but always present at important events. Sophia looked at all those faces. 10 years ago, she began, I was a frightened child in a borrowed dress and a broken heart. Today I am an adult woman with a life I never imagined possible. And all of this why? Because of words. Because of an essay I wrote about love, about family, about not giving up even when everything seems impossible. She paused, emotional but firm. The most important thing I've learned in these 10 years is that none of us overcomes challenges alone. I didn't save my mother alone. There were thousands of people who helped. Robert, who used his platform. Teacher Marianne, who believed in me. The doctors who cared for my mother. And every anonymous person who donated $10, $20, $50. Everyone played a part. And that's how life works. We save each other. So, if there is one message I want to leave for every child here, when you are afraid, when you think you won't make it, remember that you are not alone. There is always someone willing to help. You just need to have the courage to ask. You have to have the courage to be vulnerable. Because it is in vulnerability that we find our greatest strength. The audience exploded in applause that lasted over 10 minutes. Children cried. Parents cried. Helen climbed onto the stage and hugged her daughter. Robert also came up. And there, the three of them, embraced in the center of the stage, represented something greater than themselves. They represented human kindness. They represented hope. They represented living proof that love, when genuine and deep, can overcome any obstacle. When the theater lights finally went out and everyone went home, Sophia and Helen walked together through the streets of New York City. The night was cool. The stars shone timidly among the city lights. They didn't need to talk much. They just walked side by side, mother and daughter. Two survivors, two warriors, two souls connected by a love that had defied death, and one. Sophia looked at the sky and smiled. She remembered the 7-year-old girl who one day held a microphone with trembling hands and spoke the purest truth she knew. That girl still existed inside her. She still believed in the power of words, in the kindness of people, in the miracle of life. And as long as that faith existed, Sophia knew she would continue to make a difference, one word at a time, one story at a time, one life at a time. Comment down below, never give up. So I know you made it to the end of this video, and I'll mark your comment with a special heart. And if Sophia's story moved you, I have another one even more surprising to share with you. Just click on the video that's appearing on your screen now and I'll tell you all about it. A big hug, and see you next time for another emotional story. Bye-bye.